Hello, all. Just thinking here. A few years ago, I took a course by Billy Phillips from the Kabbalah Center, and it was on redacting Jesus. A very good course, especially if you're into wanting to understand higher understanding, more gnosis, and the beliefs of Kabbalah and Jesus and all of this stuff. It was a really good course. But I was thinking that one portion of the course that it was talking about, many people think that the church today basically was birthed as it was, had the scriptures and the doctrines and the deity, the Catholic or Orthodox, and all of this stuff. And I'm not denying that they were early church. But what many people don't understand was there was earlier formations of the church, even right after the time or before the temple, and they were called Gnostic. Now, they didn't call themselves Gnostic. This is what scholars and stuff have called them through the years. They were different groups who did not just depend upon the plain Peshat, the basic level of understanding of the New Testament or the letter of Paul, whatever they had. They didn't have a complete Bible at the time. Different communities have different scripture. And but they knew that it was not just mere plain teaching, that the early church fathers, especially the early church fathers, believed that it's okay to understand and study the basic scriptures like we have today, but the purpose was to um, um, grow in understanding, spiritual understanding. I'm sorry, I had a phone call trying to come through. And we see people like Origen, from 185 to 254, who basically he's a major figure in interpretation, and argue that clinging to the mere letter causes false opinions and impious statements about God. He saw the literal sense as the body of Scripture, but instead, on ascending to the soul, moral, or spiritual levels, especially where the plain reading seemed logical, certain Genesis details like physical tree of life, more like the Kabbalistic understanding and stuff. So he said, yeah, the letter's fine. He said, but if you don't proceed and go on to more of the spiritual understanding, you're trapped. And Gregory of Nicaea, 335 to 395, echoed this. Nothing that is obvious interpretation, plain sense, if not taken in its proper spiritual context, can lead to a doctrine of death rather than a doctrine of life. Because it goes with the video that I made yesterday or the day before about getting stuck. And the fact is if you get stuck, you die. And you can act like it and pray for revival or whatever, but if you're not seeking a more spiritual understanding, a higher than what you have, you're wound up going to be stagnant, and it's just the way it is. Augustine, from 354 to 430, emphasized resolving ambiguous by consulting clearer passages and church authority while allowing figurative senses. The literal meaning of Genesis, he called his work literal, but incorporated non-literal elements like extended metaphors for creation dates, focusing on theological truth over strict chronicalization. So even Augustine, who felt it was important to have it, taught a higher understanding too. Maximus the Confessor, 580 to 662, described the literal sense as flesh, corruptible, and the inner meanings as spiritual, incorruptible, urging believers not to be dominated by the literal text, lest they idolize words over the divine logos. So these are, and there's many more. The School of Antioch and other ones, we believe this, but there was a switch sometime, around 600, when you started getting the Nicaea and stuff like that, and it became more dogma than spiritual search. And you can see the same thing within Judaism too, within the Zohar, talking about, mentions the fact that we've got to go beyond the Peshat level. We got to go to the Sod. We got to go to the upper levels to find the truth. And even the first chapter of the Zohar deals with the 13 petal rose and stuff like that. There's so much out there. Don't settle. Keep seeking, climb higher, and I just want to encourage y'all. Thank you.